This is immigration attorney Parviz Malakouti, recording the day after Thanksgiving, Friday, November 26th. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. And in this video, I want to talk about a very difficult case that I had, a difficult interview. It was a marriage-based green card case. So it was an interview for adjustment of status, a US citizen who had married a national from another country, an Indian national. And this was a case that came to me early this year, and it had a lot of problems going into it. It had a lot of red flags. And so I want to talk to you about this case, specifically what happened and what lessons we can possibly glean from what happened at the interview, so that we can learn from that, especially if you're somebody who is going to be expected to go into a difficult interview, a marriage-based green card interview. So backing up for a quick second, this was a case that had a lot of red flags for a few reasons. First of all, both the husband and the wife had been married separately, okay? The beneficiary had been married to a woman who had petitioned for him, and that was for a green card, and that was a marriage that did not last. And the woman had been married 3 times previously, and she had petitioned for all 3 of her previous spouses. So there was a total of 4 failed marriages between the 2 of them, and all 4 marriages involved a petition for immigration. So this is major red flags as far as USCIS is concerned on the other side. Now, USCIS has come out with statistics indicating that they believe up to possibly half of all marriage-based adjustment of status cases are fraudulent. So they come from the perspective that a significant portion of all marriage-based green card cases are fraudulent. When they come across a case like this, where there's 4 previous marriages between the 2 spouses, between the applicant and the petitioner, and all of them involved a petition, you can expect a lot of scrutiny. And so that's what I expected as an attorney when this client came to me. However, the marriage was real. I was convinced that my clients had a real marriage, they had a bona fide marriage, and it was just a situation where the previous marriages did not work out, okay? So I took this case on knowing that it had red flags on the surface, but I believed in it. I believed in my clients. I thought they were telling me the truth from talking to them, knowing about their lives. And so we prepared the application. We sent off the adjustment of status, I-485, of course, application for adjustment of status, along with I-130, I-130A, affidavit of support, work permit application, and of course, advanced parole application. And we came to interview earlier this month. So I'm recording this in November. We came to interview early November. It was November, I think 3rd, I believe. And we prepared for this interview. We prepared for a difficult interview. So what I did to prepare for them is I had 2 separate sessions. The first one lasted about an hour and 10 minutes. The second one lasted about an hour and a half. We did the first preparation session about 3 weeks before the interview, and then the second preparation session the 2 nights before the interview. Okay, that way to refresh everybody's memory. And in this, we went over all the questions that I would expect to be asked at a bare minimum, as well as coaching on how to basically prepare when they're on their own, when they're without me. Okay, so in the first preparation session, what I did was basically I told both of them to know all of the answers on the application that we submitted. So the petitioner obviously should know all of her own personal information, the dates of her previous marriages, the divorces, her address history, her work history, etc. And the applicant should know the same, okay? In addition to that, what I had them do was make sure that they talked about the facts of their own relationship and the timeline of their relationship. The timeline ends up being very important oftentimes in a USCIS marriage-based green card interview when the adjudicator suspects there might be fraud involved. A lot of times what they zero in on is the timeline, okay? Does the applicant and the petitioner have the same idea of when they met, how they met, when they first started dating or talking, when they first got engaged, when they got married, when they met each other's families, okay? The timeline of how each one of those occurs is really important. So I had my clients go through that, okay? In addition, I had them go through the timelines of their previous marriages. And this is really, really important because a lot of times, naturally, people who have been married previously, clients, they don't want to think about the past, their painful memories, their hard memories. So they actually do their best to forget about the past. Unfortunately, for preparation for this type of interview, you have to remember, you have to bring those up and think them through because people get confused about the timelines, especially when they're talking about previous relationships. And you want to make sure you work through that confusion beforehand before the interview. You do not want to be confused thinking for the first time, oh, when was I married to my ex-husband? When did we get divorced? Blah, blah, blah. You don't want to be thinking about that for the first time when you're at the interview, especially with all the extra added stress and pressure. So I had them go over those timelines of the previous marriages. And then lastly, very importantly, I had them go over and prepare basically the facts surrounding their life together. So very often in marriage-based green card interviews, okay, the adjudicator will ask the petitioner and the applicant little details about their life together, okay, if they live together, okay, and if they live together, they'll be asked questions like, where do you live? Do you live in a house or an apartment? Who goes to work first in the morning? Where does your spouse work? How many hours per day does she work? How many hours per week does she work? Do you have neighbors? Who's your neighbor to the left side? Who's your neighbor to the right side? If it's an apartment building, do you have a neighbor up on top of you? Or do they have any babies? How many cars do you have? Who parks where? Do you park in the garage? Does the husband park in the garage? Does the wife park in the garage? These types of little details. So I have my clients, and in this instance, I had my clients go through and really make sure that they're on the same page about those issues. Now, one might think, oh, why do you have to be on the same page if you're telling the truth? Well, the reality is a lot of times people don't think about those things. They don't, people are absent-minded. They don't, they don't think through exactly what the details are of those things. So even if somebody's telling the truth, it still might make sense to prepare. It does make sense to prepare. Make sure you're on the same page about those things. Anyway, so we went to this interview and we had a tough interview. So first of all, we had a very rude adjudicator, unfortunately, and he interviewed the applicant and the petitioner with me together, okay? And then he separated them in what's called a Stokes interview. So he separated them and interviewed them one by one to ask them individual questions to make sure that those answers line up. That's called a Stokes interview. I've done videos before on this channel about a Stokes interview. Make sure to check those out if you'd like. So we had the application, the interview with them together. They did fine, okay? Then he separated them, okay? And then the husband came in first. He answered his questions, okay? Questions that I just mentioned about his wife's life, his own life, etc., etc. Then he left and the wife came in, okay? And she was interviewed. And I was present for both interviews individually. And their answers matched up so well. It was incredible. I was listening to that. Obviously I was there at the interview. I was listening, and their answers matched up so much. It almost seemed like maybe one of them had an earpiece getting answers from the other side, which of course wasn't the case, but they were very much on the same page about it. So basically the interview started wrapping up, and the adjudicator said at the end of the interview, he said something to the effect of, you have 4 failed marriages before you. This is something that looks kind of rough on the surface. But after speaking to you, I have an idea of where I'm going, or what I think he said, I have an idea of what I think you're about. That's what he said. I have an idea of what I think you're about. Me as the attorney in that interview, I took that to mean that this looks really bad on paper, but after speaking to you, I can see that it was a bona fide marriage, because I knew that it was a bona fide marriage. And so that's what the adjudicator was signaling, in my opinion, when he said that. He said that he would expect to make an answer, to give an answer soon, and if there was any additional documentation needed, he would issue a request for evidence. That interview ended on November 5th. We waited a week, we didn't hear anything. We waited another half of the next week, and then we got the approval notification. We got the notification of the USCIS check status, and then of course we got the letter approving the husband, who was the applicant for legal permanent residence. So that was a success story. That was a couple that had a very difficult case on paper, but prepared adequately. Obviously, I helped them prepare as well, but they did their homework. They really looked over the application, make sure that they knew the details, make sure that they reviewed the information about each other, etc., etc. And they were able to overcome 4 previous marriages between them, okay, all of which had a petition involved, and a very short period of courtship, okay. They met at the beginning of a year, and they were engaged only 4 months later, and they got married only 3 months after the engagement. So they only knew each other for 7 months before they got married, which is another, that short of a time frame is another red flag for USCIS. So they had a lot of factors going against them, but through a lot of preparation, being careful, treating it very seriously, and practicing, we also practiced I pretended to be an adjudicator and I asked them tough questions that I thought would possibly trip them up. Based on all of this, we were able to have a successful outcome. So if you're in a situation like that, you want to make sure that you really prepare for the interview. The preparation is absolutely key, and that means going over everything, going over timelines, practicing as well. If you can hire an attorney, you want to hire an attorney as well for that. That helps enormously. And yeah, that's basically it. Preparation is the key. So if you have any general questions about this video or about my story, feel free to throw them in the comment section below. If you have specific questions about your particular situation, or if you're interested in possibly talking about being represented, click on the link below, book a paid consultation, and we can get into all the details of your case one-on-one. And otherwise, that's it. I wish you a happy Thanksgiving weekend and have a great one.